Have you ever heard of the mysterious Marian apparition in Italy that moved the religious world in the mid-20th century? In a small town called Montichiari in the province of Brescia, the Blessed Virgin Mary appeared in a unique and deeply moving way, bringing a special message for the consecrated and the entire church. With tears in her eyes and 3 roses on her chest, white, red, and gold, Our Lady of the Mystical Rose appeared to a humble nurse named Elena Rossi, beginning a devotion that would spread across 5 continents. This story of faith, miracles, and conversion invites us to rediscover Mary's maternal role in the life of the Church and her constant intercession for priests, religious, and all of us, her beloved children. Chapter 1. The Origins of the Mystical Rose. In the small town of Montichiari, located in the province of Brescia, northern Italy, one of the most extraordinary chapters of Marian apparitions of the 20th century began to unfold. It was 1947, a world still healing from the wounds of World War II, when the Blessed Virgin Mary decided to manifest herself in a special way to a simple nurse, Elena Rossi, born on August 3, 1911, into a humble and deeply Catholic family, wasn't known for anything extraordinary. She worked tirelessly at the local hospital, where her kindness and service were recognized by all. However, God had chosen her as an instrument to convey an urgent message to the world, especially to those consecrated to Him. The first apparition occurred on November 24, 1947, in the hospital room where Elena worked. Suddenly, while praying, the Virgin Mary appeared to her, dressed in a purple mantle, the color of penance, with an expression of deep sorrow. 3 swords pierced her immaculate heart. Prayer, sacrifice, and penance were the first words the lady spoke. Elena, amazed and fearful, could barely believe what she was witnessing. In a second apparition on November 22nd, the Virgin presented herself differently. Her mantle was white, and instead of the 3 swords, she wore 3 roses on her chest, 1 white, 1 red, and 1 gold. "I am the Immaculate Conception," said the Virgin. "I am Mary of Grace, that is, the full of grace, mother of my divine Son, Jesus Christ. Through my coming to Montichiari, I wish to be called Mystical Rose. I desire that every year, on December 8th at noon, the hour of grace for the whole world be observed." The third apparition, on December 8th, the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, took place in Montichiari Cathedral. The church was filled with the faithful, and in the presence of numerous witnesses, Elena saw the Virgin descend a majestic staircase, accompanied by the children visionaries. "I have come to bring love, unity, and peace to the souls of my children," declared the lady. Then, looking down, she added, "I wish this place to be transformed into a fountain of graces." These first apparitions marked the beginning of a series of manifestations that would continue until 1966, first in Montichiari and later at the Fontanelle Spring, a few kilometers away. Through them, the Virgin Mary expressed her maternal concern for the Church, especially for priests and religious who were straying from their vocation, and asked for prayer, sacrifice, and penance as a remedy for the evils of the world. Chapter 2. A Mother's Tears. A mother's tears have the power to move even the hardest heart. How much more moving, then, are the tears of Mary, Mother of God and Mother of ours. Indeed, during the apparitions in Montichiari, one of the most striking aspects for Elena Rossi was seeing the face of the Blessed Virgin bathed in tears. In the apparition of June 1, 1947, Elena saw the Virgin dressed in black, with 3 swords plunged into her immaculate heart. Her face reflected deep sorrow, and crystalline tears rolled down her cheeks. "Why do you weep, my mother?" Elena asked, her heart heavy. Mary's answer was direct and heartbreaking. "I weep for so many of my consecrated children who betray their vocation. I weep for so many sins against purity. I weep because men continue to offend my divine Son." These Marian tears were not a new phenomenon in the history of the Church. In La Salette, in 1846, the Virgin had already appeared weeping to two French shepherd children. In Syracuse, Italy, in 1953, an image of the Virgin would weep human tears, scientifically verified. Mary's tears in Montichiari thus fell within a tradition of manifestations of maternal sorrow in the face of the world's sins. Particularly painful for Mary's heart was the state of so many consecrated souls. My beloved children, the priests and religious, are abandoning the path of their vocation. Some live in mortal sin, the Virgin revealed to Elena in another apparition. This suffering of Mary for the consecrated would be a recurring theme in the apparitions of the mystical rose. The witnesses who accompanied Elena during the ecstasies recounted how the visionary often wept inconsolably, somehow sharing the pain of the Heavenly Mother. "It's terrible to see the Mother of God weep," Elena commented afterward. "Her tears are like fire that burns the soul. I would like to comfort her, but I feel so small and powerless." On one particularly moving occasion, July 13, 1947, the Virgin showed Elena a vision of hell and the souls falling into it like snowflakes in winter. Many of these souls wore priestly vestments or religious habits. Faced with this vision, Mary's tears intensified and she said, "See why I weep. My divine Son has sent me to Montichiari to bring a new Marian devotion to all religious communities and institutes. I promise to protect and help those orders and congregations that honor me in a special way, and those institutes that cultivate this special devotion." Chapter 3. The Three United Hearts. The most characteristic symbol of the apparitions of the mystical rose are the three roses that the Virgin Mary wore on her chest: a white rose, a red rose, and a gold rose. These three colors, far from being an arbitrary choice, contain a deep spiritual symbolism that constitutes the core of the message of Montichiari. During the apparition of November 22, 1947, the Virgin explained to Elena the meaning of these three roses. The white rose represents the spirit of prayer. The red rose symbolizes the spirit of sacrifice. The gold rose represents the spirit of penance and conversion. This triad, prayer, sacrifice, and penance, forms the spiritual path. Our Lady of the Mystical Rose proposes to all the faithful, but especially to consecrated individuals. The white rose, symbolizing prayer, reminds us of the importance of constant dialogue with God. Without prayer, the Virgin told Elena, the soul withers like a flower without water. Prayer isn't merely an obligation or routine, it's the breath of the soul, the means by which we keep our relationship with the Lord alive. Mary, who pondered all things in her heart, teaches us to be contemplative souls in the midst of the world. The red rose represents sacrifice, an essential virtue in Christian life. Sacrifice is the language of love, the Virgin explained. My Son sacrificed himself on the cross out of love, and I remained at the foot of that cross, uniting my sacrifice to his. Small daily sacrifices offered with love hold immense redemptive value when united to Christ's sacrifice. Our Lady of the Mystical Rose invites us not to waste any suffering, but to transform it into an offering of love. The gold rose symbolizes penance and continuous conversion. Gold is purified in fire, Mary noted. So too the soul is purified in the crucible of penance. It's not so much about great external mortifications, but that inner attitude of humility and repentance that keeps us always open to grace and allows us to acknowledge our mistakes to begin again. These three roses aren't isolated. They intertwine, forming a crown around the Immaculate Heart of Mary, which in turn is intimately united to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. During an apparition, Elena beheld a marvelous vision. The hearts of Jesus and Mary radiant, and between them, like a small ruby, the heart of the visionary herself. Behold the mystery of love, the Virgin explained. When a soul consecrates itself to my Immaculate Heart, I lead it to the heart of my Son. This symbolism of the three united hearts, that of Jesus, that of Mary, and that of the faithful, represents the perfect communion to which we are called. Devotion to Our Lady of the Mystical Rose isn't an end in itself. It's a path leading to union with Christ through Mary. As Saint Louise Marie Grignon de Montfort taught, to Jesus through Mary. Chapter 4. The Miracle of the Roses. Devotion to Our Lady of the Mystical Rose spread rapidly throughout the world, accompanied by numerous testimonies of graces and miracles. As if the roses the Virgin wore on her chest blossomed in the hearts of the faithful, extraordinary stories of conversion, healing, and protection sprang up everywhere. One of the first documented miracles occurred in Montichiari itself, a few days after the apparition of December 8th. A religious sister at the local hospital, diagnosed with a terminal illness and given up by doctors, drank water from the spring the Virgin had blessed at Fontenelle. That very night, while praying to Our Lady of the Mystical Rose, she felt an intense fragrance of roses fill her room, despite it being the dead of winter and there being no flowers nearby. The next morning, to the astonishment of the doctors, all symptoms of her illness had vanished. In Brazil, in the city of São Paulo, a statue of Our Lady of the Mystical Rose began to shed tears of blood in 1954. The phenomenon, witnessed by hundreds of people, was investigated by ecclesiastical authorities. Chemical analyses confirmed it was human blood, but its origin couldn't be explained. During the days the prodigy lasted, numerous sick people who came to pray before the image experienced inexplicable healings. In the Philippines, a priest who had abandoned his ministry and lived far from the church received a small image of Our Lady of the Mystical Rose as a gift. Although he initially kept it out of mere courtesy, he began to notice that the room where he had placed the image periodically filled with the aroma of roses. Intrigued by this phenomenon, he began to investigate the devotion to Our Lady of the Mystical Rose, and gradually rediscovered his vocation. Today, he directs a spirituality center dedicated to the formation and recovery of priests in crisis. Particularly significant are the testimonies related to priestly and religious vocations. In Mexico, a diocesan seminary that was about to close due to a lack of vocations began a novena to Our Lady of the Mystical Rose as a last resort. On the last day of the novena, coinciding with July 13th, a monthly date dedicated to this apparition, 13 young men applied for admission to the seminary. Since then, the seminary has experienced sustained vocational flourishing. No less impressive are the cases of conversion. In Argentina, a group of mothers began to meet every 13th of the month to pray to Our Lady of the Mystical Rose for their children who had strayed from the faith. One of them had a son who had not set foot in a church for 20 years and declared himself openly atheist. After a year of prayers, this man had a dream in which a lady gave him 3 roses, white, red, and gold, and said, "My son, come home." Impacted by this dream, he went to a church where, coincidentally, there was an image of Our Lady of the Mystical Rose. Recognizing her as the lady from his dream, he experienced a profound conversion. Chapter 5. The Fountain of Graces. Among the most significant elements of the apparitions of Our Lady of the Mystical Rose is the Fontenelle Spring, located about 4 kilometers from Montichiari. This natural spring became a pilgrimage center after the Virgin, in an apparition to Elena Rossi on April 17, 1966, requested that the sick come there to receive special graces. "I desire that the sick come to this miraculous spring," the Virgin said on that occasion. "My divine Son is all love and mercy." Then she instructed Elena to kiss the first steps leading down to the spring as a sign of penance, and to drink water from the spring. "This water," Mary explained, "will be a sign of purification for humanity." The Fontenelle Spring quickly became a true Jacob's well for thousands of pilgrims who came seeking comfort and healing. The water of this spring, although it has no special chemical properties according to scientific analyses, has been associated with numerous healings that defy medical explanation. A particularly moving case is that of Carmela Bianchi, a 7-year-old Italian girl suffering from a serious degenerative disease. Doctors had told her parents that the little girl would not live beyond 10 years old. Desperate, her parents took her to Fontanelle, where they immersed the girl in the waters of the spring while praying to Our Lady of the Mystical Rose. That same night, Carmela had a dream where a very beautiful woman caressed her head, whispering, "Little one, be brave, I am with you." In the following months, to the astonishment of the doctors, her illness began to subside until it disappeared completely. The importance of water in Marian apparitions isn't unique to Fontanelle. In Lourdes, the Virgin instructed Bernadette Soubirous to dig in the ground, bringing forth a spring, a source of countless healings to this day. In Baneu, Belgium, Mary presented herself as the Virgin of the Poor, blessing a spring, reserved for all nations. These similarities are not coincidental. They underscore the continuity of Mary's message through the centuries. The water of Fontanelle holds profound symbolism in the spirituality of Our Lady of the Mystical Rose. It represents the purifying grace flowing from the heart of Christ, pierced by the lance on the cross. Mary, as mediatrix of all graces, channels this stream of divine mercy towards us. The act of drinking from the spring symbolizes our thirst for God and our desire for inner purification. Our Lady also requested a baptismal font be built near the spring, a reminder of the importance of the first sacrament, through which we are incorporated into the Church and freed from original sin. "I want this place to remind my children of the importance of their baptism," Mary explained to Elena. "Many have forgotten their baptismal promises and live as if they had never been baptized." Chapter 6. The Silent Evangelization. One of the most extraordinary aspects of devotion to Our Lady of the Mystical Rose is how it spread across the world. Unlike other Marian apparitions that quickly received ecclesiastical approval and widespread media coverage, devotion to the Mystical Rose spread almost silently, like a seed growing discreetly beneath the earth, until it bore abundant fruit. Divine providence used simple means for this silent evangelization. One of the first avenues of dissemination was the small images of the Mystical Rose, reproduced according to Elena Rossi's description. These images began circulating among religious communities in Italy and soon crossed borders, reaching convents and seminaries in Spain, Portugal, Latin America, and the Philippines. Missionaries played a crucial role in this dissemination. Priests and nuns who had personally experienced the intercession of Our Lady of the Mystical Rose brought this devotion to the most remote corners of the planet. For example, a Comboni missionary introduced the devotion to Uganda, where today there are more than 50 prayer centers dedicated to Our Lady of the Mystical Rose. Enclosed communities also contributed significantly to the spread of this Marian devotion. In the silence of their monasteries, contemplative nuns fervently prayed to Our Lady of the Mystical Rose, especially for the sanctification of priests, their letters to other communities, and the testimonies of visitors and chaplains caused the devotion to spread like concentric circles in water. A peculiar phenomenon accompanied this spread: itinerant miracles. Small images of Our Lady of the Mystical Rose began to weep or bleed in different parts of the world, as if the Virgin wanted to draw attention to her message in different cultural contexts. These phenomena, although not all have received official recognition from the Church, attracted the attention of thousands of the faithful and fostered the creation of prayer groups, cenacles of Our Lady of the Mystical Rose. Prayer groups inspired by the model of the apostles gathered with Mary in the cenacle awaiting the Holy Spirit, multiplied especially in Latin America. These groups generally meet on the 13th of each month to pray the Holy Rosary, meditate on the message of Our Lady of the Mystical Rose, and pray especially for priests and vocations. The devotion found fertile ground particularly in Brazil, where numerous mystical phenomena associated with Our Lady of the Mystical Rose have been reported. In the city of Jacareí, for instance, an image of the Virgin under this title is said to have shed tears on more than 100 occasions since 1996, according to testimonies from numerous faithful. Although the Church maintains prudence regarding these phenomena, popular fervor has grown, and today there are hundreds of shrines dedicated to Our Lady of the Mystical Rose in Brazil. Chapter 7. Mary, Mother of the Consecrated. One of the most distinctive characteristics of the message of Our Lady of the Mystical Rose is its special focus on priests, religious men and women. While Mary is the mother of all Christians, in Montichiari she wished to manifest herself particularly as Mother of the Consecrated, showing a maternal concern for those who have dedicated their lives entirely to the service of God and the Church. I desire that the 13th of each month be considered a Marian Day, the Virgin told Elena during an apparition. The 12 preceding days will be days of preparation with special prayers. This request was primarily aimed at religious communities, whom the Virgin invited to live this monthly devotion with particular intensity. Mary's predilection for the consecrated is not exclusive to the apparitions of Our Lady of the Mystical Rose. Throughout the history of the Church, the Virgin has always shown a particular love for those who follow more closely in the footsteps of her Son. Let us recall that Jesus' first miracle at the wedding feast of Cana was performed thanks to Mary's intercession on behalf of the newlyweds, whom we could consider a figure of the souls who consecrate themselves to Christ. During the apparitions, the Virgin revealed to Eleanor her suffering for the priests and religious who did not live according to their vocation. My immaculate heart bleeds to see so many beloved children betraying their calling, she said on one occasion, and on another, for every priest or religious unfaithful to their vocation, there are 1,000 demons working for the damnation of souls. But alongside this pain, Mary also manifested her unconditional love and her desire to help consecrated individuals in difficulty. I never abandon my beloved children, she assured, even when they stray. My heart follows them and awaits their return. This maternal attitude of Mary towards priests and religious perfectly reflects the words of Jesus on the cross when he entrusted his beloved disciple to the care of his mother. Behold your son, John 19:26. Our Lady of the Mystical Rose requests specific prayers for the consecrated, especially for those going through crises or difficulties. One deeply devout practice stemming from these apparitions is the spiritual adoption of a priest. A lay faithful person commits to praying daily for a specific priest, offering sacrifices for his sanctification and perseverance. In a historical moment when the Church faces a shortage of vocations in many parts of the world, the message of Our Lady of the Mystical Rose takes on special significance. The Virgin Mary doesn't just ask for prayers for existing vocations, but she promises her intercession to inspire new vocations wherever her message is received with fervor. Where devotion to Our Lady of the Mystical Rose flourishes, she promised, vocations to the priesthood and consecrated life will also flourish. Chapter 8. Messages for our time. Although the apparitions of Our Lady of the Mystical Rose took place over 7 decades ago, her messages remain surprisingly relevant, speaking directly to the concerns and challenges of our time. Like any authentic intervention from heaven, these apparitions are not a phenomenon anchored in the past, but a light that illuminates our present and guides us towards the future. One of the most urgent messages from Our Lady of the Mystical Rose concerns the crisis of faith affecting the contemporary Church. Many of my children have lost their sense of the sacred, the Virgin lamented in an apparition. They treat holy things with indifference and triviality. This warning resonates powerfully in an era marked by secularism and desacralization, where even within the Church there is sometimes a loss of the sense of the transcendent. Our Lady of the Mystical Rose also warned about the dangers threatening the Christian family. The enemy attacks the family with particular virulence, the Virgin explained to Elena Rossi, because he knows that by destroying this sanctuary, he destroys the entire society. This concern for the family coincides with the consistent teaching of the last popes, who have repeatedly pointed out the centrality of the family institution for the spiritual and moral health of society. Particularly prophetic is the message about purity. In a time characterized by the sexual revolution and the trivialization of sexuality, Our Lady of the Mystical Rose raised her maternal voice. Impurity is the door through which many other sins enter. A pure heart sees God. An impure heart can barely see itself. This defense of purity does not stem from narrow moralism, but from the conviction that chastity, lived according to one's state in life, is a condition for true inner freedom. Another very timely message is the invitation to rediscover the redemptive value of suffering. In a culture that flees from pain and seeks immediate pleasure, Our Lady of the Mystical Rose reminds us that suffering, united to that of Christ, acquires infinite meaning and value. Do not waste any suffering, the Virgin advised. Offer it all in reparation for the sins of the world. Our Lady of the Mystical Rose also spoke about the difficult times awaiting the Church and the world. Without falling into sterile catastrophism, she warned about periods of trial and purification. The Church will pass through a dark night, she predicted, but afterwards will come a glorious morning. This realistic yet hopeful vision of history coincides with the Christian perspective that sees in crises not the end of the road, but opportunities for purification and growth. Finally, one of the most comforting messages from Our Lady of the Mystical Rose is the promise of her maternal protection for those who sincerely embrace her devotion. To those who honor my Immaculate Heart under the invocation of Our Lady of the Mystical Rose, the Virgin promised, I will grant the grace of final perseverance and special protection in times of temptation. Chapter 9. Signs in the Heavens. Throughout history, great Marian manifestations have frequently been accompanied by extraordinary celestial phenomena. Let us recall the miracle of the sun in Fatima, witnessed by more than 70,000 people in 1917, or the luminous apparitions in the sky of Zaytun, Egypt, between 1968 and 1971, photographed and filmed by thousands of witnesses. The apparitions of Our Lady of the Mystical Rose have been no exception to this pattern, and numerous testimonies speak of heavenly signs that have accompanied this devotion. On July 13, 1947, the day the Virgin appeared for the third time to Elena Rossi in Montechiari Cathedral, several witnesses reported seeing the sun dance and emit lights of different colors, similar to the phenomenon observed in Fatima 30 years earlier. A religious sister present that day, Sister Gabriella Crivelli, left a written testimony. The sun seemed to approach the earth, spinning on itself and projecting rays of colors I had never seen before. It was not a natural phenomenon, but clearly supernatural. In Fontenelle, on May 13, 1966, a date commemorating the first apparition of Fatima, a group of pilgrims observed how the sun paled until it took on a silvery color, allowing it to be looked at directly without harming the eyes. Then, it began to pulsate like a heart and to emit rays of light that formed the letters MR in the sky, interpreted as the initials of Maria Rosa Mystica. The phenomenon lasted approximately 20 minutes and was witnessed by more than 50 people. Even more surprising are the testimonies of celestial phenomena that occurred in places where Our Lady of the Mystical Rose is venerated. thousands of miles from Montichiari, in Medellin, Colombia, during a procession in honor of Our Lady of the Mystical Rose on July 13, 1986. Hundreds of faithful witnessed how the clouds opened, forming a kind of luminous path in the sky, through which a female silhouette crowned with light seemed to descend. Numerous photographs taken that day show an inexplicable luminous phenomenon that cannot be attributed to camera defects or photographic tricks. At the Sanctuary of Our Lady of the Mystical Rose in Talpa, Mexico, similar phenomena are reported every 13th of the month. Pilgrims who attend the celebrations claim to see the sun surrounded by a multicolored halo, and sometimes small lights descending from the sky over the image of the Virgin during the procession. A local priest, Father Joaquin Hernandez, has compiled more than 300 written testimonies from people who claim to have witnessed these phenomena. What is the meaning of these celestial signs? Christian tradition has always interpreted extraordinary astronomical phenomena as divine signs, following the biblical pattern. Let us remember the Star of Bethlehem that guided the Magi from the east, or the darkness that covered the earth during the crucifixion of Jesus. In the book of Revelation, St. John describes a great sign in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. Revelation 12:1. An image the Church has identified with Mary. The celestial signs associated with Our Lady of the Mystical Rose seem to have a profoundly confirmatory character. They reinforce the authenticity of the message and draw attention to it. As Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, later Pope Benedict XV, explained in his theological commentary on the Secret of Fatima, apparitions and supernatural signs are not intended to satisfy curiosity or a desire for the marvelous, but rather to lead us to the unique revelation of Christ, who continues to speak to us in the Church. Chapter 10. Our Lady of the Mystical Rose and the Church. The relationship between the apparitions of Our Lady of the Mystical Rose and ecclesiastical authority has followed a cautious and gradual path, as is often the case with all supernatural phenomena within the Catholic Church. The Church's prudence in these matters is not a sign of skepticism, but of fidelity to its mission to test everything, hold fast what is good. 1 Thessalonians 5:21. The first apparitions in Montichiari, 1947, initially received a reserved reception from the diocesan authorities. The Bishop of Brescia, Monsignor Giacinto Tredici, adopted a wait-and-see attitude and ordered a discreet investigation. Elena Rossi underwent medical and psychological examinations, which concluded that the visionary enjoyed perfect mental health and showed no signs of hysteria or mythomania. The subsequent apparitions at Fontanelle, 1966, coincided with the post-conciliar period, a time of great ferment and change in the Church. The new Bishop of Brescia, Monsignor Luigi Morstabilini, issued a decree in 1968 which, without commenting on the supernatural nature of the events, prohibited organized pilgrimages to Fontanelle and the dissemination of publications that presented the events as supernatural without adding the necessary reservations. This official stance, although restrictive, did not imply a definitive rejection, but was framed within the traditional caution with which the Church approaches these types of phenomena. As Cardinal Ercilio Tonini later explained, the Church is in no hurry in these matters. Truth does not fear time. On the contrary, time is its best ally. Despite the restrictions, devotion to Our Lady of the Mystical Rose continued to grow among the faithful. Numerous priests, religious, and even bishops privately expressed their support for this devotion, recognizing its spiritual fruits. Pope Paul VI himself, a native of the province of Brescia, received Elena Rossi in a private audience in 1975, and according to witnesses, blessed her with words of encouragement. A significant moment in the evolution of ecclesiastical recognition was the authorization granted in 1984 by the Bishop of Brescia for the construction of a chapel at Fontanelle. While this authorization did not imply official recognition of the apparitions, it did represent an implicit endorsement of the worship that was taking place there. In the year 2000, the new Bishop of Brescia, Monsignor Giulio Sanguinetti, appointed an official chaplain for Fontanelle and established regulations for liturgical celebrations at the site, thus de facto recognizing its character as a Marian shrine. In his decree, he stated, "Without commenting on the events attributed to supernatural interventions, I acknowledge the abundant spiritual fruits that this devotion has produced in numerous faithful." A major advance occurred in 2001 when the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, then presided over by Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, officially authorized the devotion to Mary Mystical Rose as a legitimate private devotion, provided it remained within the bounds of sound Catholic doctrine. The recognition process took a decisive step in 2013 when the Bishop of Brescia, Monsignor Luciano Monari, established a theological commission to study in depth the events of Montichiari and Fontanelle. The work of this commission continues today, following the criteria established by the Holy See for the discernment of apparitions and revelations. Chapter 11, Living the Spirituality of the Mystical Rose. Devotion to Our Lady of the Mystical Rose is not exhausted in the knowledge of the historical events of Montichiari and Fontanelle, nor in the practice of certain prayers or external rituals. Like all authentic Marian devotion, it must translate into a Christian lifestyle that reflects the virtues of Mary and leads us to a more intimate union with Christ. How then can we live the spirituality of the mystical rose in our daily lives? The first element, represented by the white rose, is prayer. The Virgin Mary asked in Montichiari for an intensification of prayer life, especially the Holy Rosary. "Pray the Rosary with fervor and devotion," Mary insisted. This prayer, which Catholic tradition considers a compendium of the Gospel, allows us to contemplate with Mary's eyes the mysteries of Christ's life. Prayer should not be limited to specific times of the day, but should become a permanent attitude, a continuous dialogue with God. Saint Teresa of Avila defined prayer as a treatment of friendship with Him whom we know loves us. Our Lady of the Mystical Rose invites us to cultivate this friendship with God, to seek moments of silence and recollection amidst the bustle of the world, to make our entire lives a pleasing offering to the Lord. The second element, symbolized by the red rose, is sacrifice. In a world that seeks immediate pleasure and flees from anything that implies effort or renunciation, Our Lady of the Mystical Rose reminds us of the redemptive value of sacrifice offered out of love. It is not a matter of seeking suffering for its own sake, which would be a masochistic deviation, but of accepting daily crosses with love and transforming them into opportunities for spiritual growth. These sacrifices can be very simple: renouncing a comfort in favor of someone who needs it more, accepting the inconveniences of work with patience, offering time and attention to those who suffer loneliness, controlling a hurtful word or a gesture of impatience. The important thing is not the magnitude of the sacrifice, but the love with which it is performed and its union with the sacrifice of Christ on the cross. The gold rose speaks to us of penance and conversion. The spirituality of Our Lady of the Mystical Rose invites us to sincere and frequent examination of conscience, to recognize our faults without self-deception or justifications, to regularly approach the sacrament of reconciliation. True conversion is not just abandoning evil, but orienting our entire lives towards good, towards God, who is the supreme good. A characteristic aspect of devotion to Our Lady of the Mystical Rose is the Hour of Grace, celebrated on December 8th, the Feast of the Immaculate Conception between 12 noon and 1 p.m. Our Lady promised special graces to those who dedicate this hour to prayer and penance. This practice has spread throughout the world, and many faithful testify to having received extraordinary favors during this privileged time. Another distinctive element is the celebration of the 13th of each month, especially dedicated to Our Lady of the Mystical Rose. On this day, the reception of the sacraments, meditation on the mysteries of the Rosary, and special prayers for priests and religious are recommended. In many places, processions are held with the image of Our Lady of the Mystical Rose, reminding us that the Christian faith is not only an individual experience, but a community and public one. Devotion to Our Lady of the Mystical Rose also invites us to a special commitment to consecrated individuals. This commitment can be expressed through the spiritual adoption of a priest or religious person, for whom we offer daily prayers and sacrifices. We can also concretely support seminaries, convents and monasteries with our material resources, or foster priestly and religious vocations in our family and parish environments. Chapter 12. Prayer to Mary. Mystical Rose, Blessed Virgin Mary, Mystical Rose, Mother of the Church and of all consecrated souls, we humbly prostrate ourselves before your maternal presence to implore your powerful intercession. You, who appeared in Montichiari and Fontanelle with 3 roses on your breast, white, red and gold, teach us to live in depth the mystery of prayer, sacrifice and penance. White Rose of Prayer, help us to keep our hearts constantly lifted up to God. May our lives be a continuous praise to the Creator, a dialogue of love with Him who first loved us. Teach us to pray as you did, keeping all things in our hearts, meditating on them in the presence of God. May the Holy Rosary be for us, as it was for you, a chain of love that unites us to heaven. Red Rose of Sacrifice, you who stood firm at the foot of the cross, contemplating the supreme sacrifice of your beloved Son, give us the strength to embrace our daily crosses with love and generosity. Help us to understand that true love always involves giving and renunciation, and that our small sacrifices, united to that of Christ, acquire infinite value for the salvation of the world. Gold Rose of Penance, immaculate from your conception, who never knew the stain of sin, instill in our hearts a sincere repentance for our faults and the ardent desire for continuous conversion. Help us to humbly recognize our weaknesses and to confidently resort to the sacrament of reconciliation, an inexhaustible source of divine mercy. Mother of the consecrated, turn your compassionate gaze towards your beloved children, the priests, religious men and women of the entire world. Protect those who remain faithful to their vocation, support those who are going through moments of doubt or difficulty, and win back, with your maternal love, those who have strayed from the path of their consecration. Raise up in the Church numerous and holy vocations to the priesthood and consecrated life. Mother of the Church, in these difficult times that the bark of Peter is going through, be our beacon of hope and our guiding star. Protect the Holy Father, the bishops, priests, and all the people of God from the dangers that threaten the faith. May the Church, born from the side opened of Christ on the cross and entrusted to your maternal care, faithfully fulfill its mission of bringing the good news to the ends of the earth. Mystical Rose, comfort of the afflicted, turn your merciful eyes towards all who suffer in body or spirit. Visit the sick, comfort the dying, accompany the lonely, strengthen those persecuted for the sake of the faith, console those who mourn the loss of their loved ones. May all experience the sweetness of your maternal presence and find in you a safe haven in the storms of life. Queen of Peace, in a world torn apart by hatreds, violence, and wars, be you the messenger of reconciliation and harmony among peoples. May nations lay down their arms and learn to resolve their conflicts through dialogue and mutual understanding. May peace, the precious gift of your risen Son, reign in hearts, in families, and among nations. Mother and teacher, you who in Cana of Galilee spoke those words that are a program of life for every Christian. Do whatever he tells you. Help us to be docile to the divine will and faithful fulfillers of the word of God. Following your example of perfect disciple of Christ, may we walk with firm steps towards the heavenly homeland, where we hope to enjoy eternally communion with the Blessed Trinity and with you, our sweet Mother. Mary, Mystical Rose, Mother of the Church, pray for us. Amen.